Hey y'all, we miss y'all a lot and we hope that y'all are staying safe and just are good. Worship with us.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over children. Mr. Joe again. I'm sure many of you probably didn't expect to see me 2 weeks in a row on here, or 3 weeks, I think. And I can't remember now. Maybe it's 2. And those of you who came to church Sunday, you heard me speak then, and some of y'all are probably asking, what's Mr. Joe? So why is he all of a sudden so present? Well, I thank God for a brother in Christ, Mr. Corey, who has enough faith and trust in me to speak and lead in his absence. Mr. Corey's on vacation. He's probably fishing on the beach, or tanning, or swimming, or surfing. Who knows? He could be on his way back by now. I haven't really talked to him since he took his vacation, but I'm happy to do it anytime he asks me to. All right, so the whole idea of being a leader is very romantic, and I don't mean to use the word romantic in the sense of like a boy and a girl's relationship. I mean romantic in the sense it's exciting, it's exhilarating, there's a lot of attraction there, and it's kind of fantastical or fantasy driven, where everybody dreams of being the big boss of a multi-million-dollar company, and you got your CEO, first Chief Executive Officer, your CFO, Chief Financial Officer. You have your COO, Chief Operational Officer, and then Vice President of Communications, and there's so many leaders. And for those of you who ever find yourself in a federal, state, or municipal government job, we call that bureaucracy. Basically, too many chiefs and not enough Indians. More bureaucrats mean more taxes. But that's a lesson on politics and economics, not on church leadership. So the last 2 weeks we were talking about the characteristics of leaders, right? And last week was, I told you, a Christian leader is moral in their behavior, ethical in their handling of people and resources, and biblical in their teaching. And then I gave you a few other categories within each one of those. And the week before that, we were kind of talking about a little bit different focuses on leadership, where leaders are developed, and not everybody that wants to be a leader it gets to be a leader, and a lot of leaders don't want to be leaders, and leaders make bad mistakes and bad choices. But and I told you a little bit about a leader should be duplicating themselves. If you ever serve in the military, or some kind of public safety, you'll see that you have sergeants, and you have lieutenants, and you have captains, and the whole role of a sergeant is to train his person under him to become a sergeant one day, when that sergeant moves up to lieutenant. And then the whole point of a lieutenant, a big aspect of being a lieutenant, is that lieutenant has a bunch of sergeants that work under him. He or she should be leading and guiding and directing them in a way that they can one day become a lieutenant, so that he can move up to captain. All right, and the captain's the same way for the lieutenant, and the major's the same way for the captain, and the chief and the assistant chief's the same way for the major. If you have anyone under you, under your authority, you as a leader should be developing them, so that when you step out, or step up, or step away, or in this case, Mr. Corey takes vacation, he's trained and developed me so that I can kind of do my best to fulfill his role in his absence. He's still our leader, but I, being his servant, have taken on his role as he's gone. And that's what leadership does. It makes more leaders. Okay. So today we're going to talk about church leadership. All right. So now this is not doctrinal, what I'm fixing to tell you. When I say doctrinal, you're going to find this reference some in the Bible, but basically with church, you have sheep, you have goats. Sheep being Christians saved by God's grace, born again believers. Then you have goats, what we like to refer to as those who aren't saved. And then you have lost sheep, which are Christians who become lost. They fall, But then you have a shepherd, okay? And the shepherd would be the leader of the sheep, okay? And then there's senior shepherds and junior shepherds. And we use this farming terminology quite a bit when it comes to sheep and goats and shepherds. And there are also wolves, okay? Wolves. Now, your shepherd loves your sheep, right? Well, then you have wolves that love the sheep in a different way. They love wolves because they're tasty. They love wolves because they like to eat them and destroy them and break. Shepherds love sheep because that's their children. That's their income. They raise the sheep. They take care of the sheep. They love the sheep. But then you have wolves who seek to devour the sheep. So it's very important when you are a sheep or when you are a Christian under a leader to make sure that leader is biblical in their teaching. Or otherwise, they might be a wolf disguised as a shepherd. Okay? Now, that's your false prophets, and, y'all are going to have to ask Pastor Jeff about that. That's in his area of expertise. He's real good about calling out false prophets, and, that requires a seminary background to do that, which Mr. Joe don't have. So we're going to leave that alone. You definitely need to know your difference in the sheep and the wolves and the goats and the shepherds. All right. So here is the actual biblical qualifications for overseers in a church. An overseer being a pastor and a deacon being a servant of the pastor. Okay? That's what Mr. Joe is, a deacon, and Mr. Bob, and Mr. Kevin. And one day soon, hopefully, Mr. Josh. So qualifications for overseers and deacons. This is found in 1 Timothy chapter 3. Here is a trustworthy saying. Whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, nor violence, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders, so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. In the same way, deacons are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, and not pursuing dishonest gain. They must keep hold the depth of the truths of the faith with a clear conscience. They must first be tested, and then, if there is nothing against them, let them serve as deacons. In the same way, the women are to be worthy of respect, not malicious talkers, but temperate and trustworthy in everything. A deacon must be faithful to his wife and must manage his children and his household well. Those who have served well gain an excellent standing and great assurance in their faith in Christ Jesus. All right, now you'll see lots of references there, he and him and they. This does not qualify, this does not disqualify women from leadership roles in the church. Okay? So, just because you see a lot of he's and him doesn't mean there's not room for she's and hers. Okay? I know many faithful and just great women leaders. So that's just how this is written. There's a lot of he's, a lot of brothers, and so don't just hear he and brother and him and think that that's just for men, because women are called too. Miss Casey, she's a minister. Miss Erin, she's a minister. Miss Julie, she's a ministry assistant. Okay, uh, there's lots of leadership roles in the church. All right, so let's kind of break this down a little bit. We're at 11 minutes. I'm going to try to go 10 and close. All right, 10 more and close. So that put us at 20 minutes, or 19, or 21. Sorry. All right, so first I want to show you whoever aspires to be an overseer is a noble task. All right, that doesn't mean everybody who becomes a leader aspired to be one. All right, I did not see 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was serving with Pastor Jeff in the youth ministry, that I would one day be a deacon still in the youth ministry. All right. So Eli's dad, when his daddy was the youth minister, and Eli was this little bitty 3-year-old running around with his sippy cup. I was helping Mr. Jeff back then, and I never aspired to be a deacon. Okay, I never aspired to be a youth leader. It's just something God kind of put me in, and you'll find that a lot in the Christian walk. You know, God asks you to do some things that you're not always comfortable doing. All right, so it's a noble task. Remember that. Above reproach and faithful to his wife. Now also insert their family, okay? Because there's some people that aren't necessarily married, or maybe they're divorced, or their wife died. So faithful to his wife, and I'm going to say and or family. Temperate and self-controlled. All right, so above reproach means if somebody's trying to scrape up some dirt on you, it should take them a lot of work to find. There shouldn't be any dirt on you. Above reproach means, maybe somebody who is below reproach, I guess, would be someone with like an addiction, or a bad addiction, or maybe they haven't necessarily completely been repentant. Maybe somebody who still has some anger issues. Above reproach means basically, in layman's term, there's not a whole lot of dirt on you. Now, we know as Christians we're all dirty. There's dirt on all of us. In this case, it's talking about major dirt, okay? All right, temperate. That's easy. Be able to control your temper. Not to be fiery. Now, fiery is a good thing. I love hearing Pastor Jeff preach. He's a fiery preacher. He is full of energy and fire and brimstone. That's not what it means when it says temperate. Temperate means not quick to, fly off the roof and get angry and, mad and start breaking stuff, okay? Or saying words that you regret later, okay? Temperate means, kind of, instead of having a bunch of this right here, just kind of steady as she goes. That's a Navy terminology there. All right, self-control, that's easy. Now, I'm not saying that I have the best self-control. There's lots of things that I do and say and wish I didn't do and say, minutes later or an hour later. I got 2 little girls. They're quick to get me in angry. Thankfully not to the rage point, but it's hard being a Christian and leading a family as a spiritual leader. There are some times where you might want to lose control, but as leaders, we're called to have self-control, okay? Self-control, that's one of the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that's a sermon in itself, but that's definitely necessary for leadership. Respectable, hospitable, okay? Respectable and hospitable, those are both easy things to describe there. Do people respect you as a person? If they don't, why don't they? Okay? And I've learned with my short time in law enforcement that respect is something that you get by showing it. Okay? And why would anybody be any different? If you want respect, you give it, you show it. All right, hospitable, that's catering and being welcoming to newcomers. Oh, you're thirsty. Here's the water. Would you like some coffee? Let me introduce you to some people over here. How many times does somebody walk in the youth group and they don't know anybody and they just kind of sit there on their cell phone? Well, I try to do my best to go introduce myself and introduce them to somebody closer to their age that they can kind of fellowship with. We're called to do that. We're called to be hospitable. All right? We shouldn't be turning anybody away. And we definitely don't want somebody sitting there alone without fellowship, because that's why we come to church, for fellowship. That's one of the reasons. Able to teach. All right, now this doesn't mean to have a doctorate degree in divinity or a master's in biblical studies. Able to teach means you understand the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The fact that he was born of a virgin, that he lived a perfect sinful life, that he worked miracles, and he led disciples. Able to teach means you are able to teach biblical principles, at least biblical basics. Okay, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a theologian. Okay, I didn't go to seminary. All right, I'd love to one day, but that's just never been an option for me. But I do try every day to read a little bit of Scripture and interpret it, and allow God to interpret it to me. I don't try to interpret Scripture. We're not called to do that. God interprets it himself by giving it to us to read it. We meditate and pray on it, and he makes sense of it, okay? But you got to be able to teach, okay? To be a leader, to be a church leader, you got to be able to teach. And you're not going to always be comfortable. Man, I tell you, the first time I taught, I was just pins and needles the whole time, sweating, profusely nervous, okay? Not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, okay? Drunkenness can be anything. That could be an addiction like pornography, nicotine, any kind of a drug abuse, or, just an addiction, period. The reason we have 7 deadly sins, which is another sermon, but the reason they're called 7 deadly sins is because those 7 deadly sins lead to addictions, and addictions rule over us if we don't give them to God and allow him to take them from us, okay? Not quarrelsome. Let's not go around looking for a fight or an argument, okay? Really and truly, the stuff that churches split over are ridiculous. Okay, because there are always some people who are quarrelsome that loves to look and pick fights. And we're called to be peacekeepers, okay? Not troublemakers, not a lover of money. Really and truly, that's a big one. No one should ever go into a ministry role of leadership for money. And if they do, they don't last long and their church dies. If they're there for the money, God does not bless their ministry usually. Okay? All right. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him. All right. I will be the first to say I do not have 2 perfectly obedient little girls, but I do my best to teach them biblical truths to make them better people. And it is my job to see that they obey to the best of my ability. That doesn't mean just because somebody has some troubled children that they can't be a church leader. Because I've known pastors with trouble in their family, and honestly, the pastor was doing everything they could. Some people are just wild, and it takes a while for them to come back around. All right, so don't think just because there's some strife in your family that you can't be a leader. But are you doing your job to settle it and make peace where you can? Okay. Teaching biblical truths. All right. He must do in a manner worthy of full respect. So if you're given a task, do it to the best of your ability where somebody will respect your work when you're finished, or God's work. Okay? If anyone does not know how to manage his family, how can he take care of God's church? Another self-explanatory. Okay? Manage yourself, manage your family, and then you can start managing others. All right? Must not be a recent convert. Okay? Now this this kind of hurts people's feelings, but brand new Christians aren't necessarily always called into leadership. It has happened. But you need to have some foundations in the Word before you can start leading others, okay? You know, no one just starts off as a carpenter. You know, most of the time they start off as some kind of a carpenter assistant or, you know, maybe some kind of cleanup crew. And after a while of learning from that master carpenter, then they can become an apprentice and then a journeyman. And then one day they can be the carpenter themselves. So we should stray from giving too much responsibility to new converts because there's still a lot of foundations that need to be built there. Okay? All right, he may be conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. Okay, so that's something we got to be careful of. A lot of times when you give people authority and they're new to the idea of it, they can kind of become conceited and it's about them, it's not about God, all right? So we got to be careful with that. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace or into the devil's trap. Do people respect you? Do people look at you as a positive person to be around? Okay? In the same way, deacons are to be worthy of respect, sincere, not indulging in much wine, not pursuing dishonest gains. A lot of this is the same as pastors, okay? They must first be tested, and if there is nothing against them, let them serve, okay? So, be prepared. If you're given a leadership role, you will be tested by either your immediate supervisor or somebody above. You know, Corey has to turn stuff in to Pastor Jeff. Pastor Jeff has to turn stuff in to Pastor Randy. And, you know, Pastor Randy has to answer to the Lord about everything he does. Not to mention he has different committees, you know, finance committee, personnel committee, you know, the church board. So there's nobody that just has totalitarian authority in the church. All right? Not saying that a pastor should have a boss, because they don't. God is their boss. But they still have to answer to, you know, their sheep once in a while, right? And we're called to look for ways we can support ministry roles. But we're not supposed to be testing leaders. Okay? Are they preaching the Bible? Are they biblical in their teaching, ethical in their handling of resources, and moral in their behavior? If so, follow them, okay? But you got to be able to recognize good from bad here. All right, so we're about out of time. We're at 24 minutes. I said I was going to try to make it short. So I'm going to close this last part. When you serve well, God gives you more responsibility. Okay? And I don't agree with the term God won't put you through anything that you can't handle. Everything God gives you, we can't handle. But we can handle it with Him. Okay? That's true in all roles of leadership. God gave it to you. God will bring you through it. And when you need guidance and direction in leading people, there are people in your life that you can talk to that God speaks through. We have prayer that we can pray to God for advice and answers. Okay, and then we have meditation on His Word. Thinking, open the Bible and reading will help you lead better than almost anything. Okay? And I think if we remember those few little things, that we can start raising up some leaders. And I'd love to name drop and call out a few people in the youth group. You know who you are. Those who are faithful, those who are looking to serve. Just Sunday, I was in there teaching, and I got there first, and in walks Jackson. I said, Jackson, put me some music on, man. I don't know how to pull this computer up and get music going. Can you help me out? He did it, okay? And he served. He had a role Sunday. I couldn't get music going. He knew how to. He did it, okay? All the time we see a lot of the juniors and seniors in our youth group that they have a following of young girls or boys that really look up to them. Take advantage of those opportunities, youth. You have way more people looking up to you than you really realize. Okay? VBS is an excellent place, another place to learn leadership. You tell Miss Casey you want to help with VBS, she's going to give you some responsibility. Do it well. Do it with pride and glorify God in your choices and decisions, and it'll all come out in the positive towards the end. Okay? I love y'all. I'm glad to y'all to give me your patience for another day, and I know we'll all look forward to seeing Mr. Corey back next Wednesday or Sunday, and I'll talk to y'all later.